700 Marines ordered to assist in Los Angeles. They are expected to arrive. Well, they have been arriving. We've got Mayor Adams of New York City saying that there are anti-ICE riots in L.A. that would be totally unacceptable in New York. So they're drawing a pretty hard line on that one. You've seen some other places, Austin, Tampa, where there are reports of some gatherings beginning. We're very clear on this. I think everyone's very clear on this. The right to protest, obviously protected under the First Amendment. The right to loot a Foot Locker or a CVS or whatever is not, in fact, covered under the First Amendment. And this whole fight over illegal immigration enforcement is absolutely critical for the administration. And, Clay, I'm happy to see so far they are taking the law and order perspective and not backing down 1 inch, because this is setting a tone for the rest of the 4 years as well.
Yeah, what I was talking about yesterday is I do think this is a really concrete difference between Trump 1.0 and Trump 2.0. And you remember very well, everyone out there does, in the summer of 2020, the entire nation came unglued. And I think a big part of that was Tim Walz, governor of Minnesota, refusing to call out the National Guard in time to bring peace to Minneapolis. And then what happened in Minneapolis skyrocketed, spiraled everywhere. And for many people, it was the end of the COVID restrictions, as you well remember, because Dr. Anthony Fauci suddenly came out after telling people that they couldn't be in any groups at all and said, well, hundreds of thousands of people can actually come out in the streets and march. And many people said, wait a minute, you were telling us that we couldn't kids couldn't go to school. We couldn't have non-essential, remember that phrase, non-essential businesses open. And suddenly you decide that everybody should be able to go out and march in the summer of 2020. And I think in retrospect, Trump wishes that he had called out the National Guard in Minnesota and tried to nip this in the bud. And so I think this is Trump 2.0 saying, we're not going to allow these protests to flourish and take root like we did in 2020. Also, the difference being it's not an election year, which means that whatever the impact is of the Trump response is not immediately going to the ballot box, which is why I think they were apprehensive and I think, quite frankly, slow on dealing with those riots back in 2020. So this is Trump saying, I learned from the first term, we're not going to have this happen
That
again.
was one of the biggest mistakes, I would argue, in the Trump first term. People often talk about Fauci. Look, very hard in that moment to understand all the implications of the CDC and allowing them to set these policies. And I mean, I remember I spoke to Trump in, I've told you about this and talked to the audience about this, May of 2020. Talked to you about all this, and he said, look, we're going to leave this to the states. There was a lot that was unknown then. Looting and rioting, we knew that was bad. And there was a period where there was not nearly a firm enough response in 2020. I think that was a lesson learned for the administration. I think this time around they are showing that it's very easy to draw this line here. Yes, you want to gather lawfully and protest. That's great. That's America. The moment you start blocking highways, throwing rocks at cops, breaking into stores, stealing things, you are in violation of a number of statutes, and the laws still apply to you no matter how upset you are. On this issue of illegal immigration, it's interesting, Clay, I've seen a shift in the conversation on the right from what about the big, beautiful bill to this is an all or nothing issue, meaning we either enforce sovereignty and begin to deport some of the 10 million that Biden brought in, or nothing else matters. I agree with that. I think if we don't establish secure borders and interior enforcement, we just have a de facto open border. And all the implications of this, I mean, what you're seeing in Southern California, the massive expense that is borne not just by the taxpayers of California, but by the federal taxpayer as well. There's all this money that is funneled from federal dollars to Medi-Cal, which is like California's version of Medicare, Medicaid rather, Medi-Cal, and the apportionment issue with members of Congress. You have far more Democrat members of Congress. The estimates, I think it's a couple of dozen nationwide.
15 to 20 at least. And this is important, I think. I don't think a lot of audience even understands this because I didn't know it. illegal immigrants get counted for purposes of congressional districts. So when you say roughly 700,000 people are being represented, if there are 20 million illegals, that is helping Democrats because they're overwhelmingly clustered in sanctuary cities, and otherwise there would be less Democrat representatives.
Enormously important. And it also is a reminder to everybody, as we'll go deep into the law and order aspects of all of this and why it's so important that Trump is following through. The administration has to see this through. This is just the beginning of it, too. But, Clay, this is something, what happens in Los Angeles, I think there had been an idea that a lot of people had, that's not really my problem. I live in Nebraska. That's not really my problem. I live in a nice red state. I live in South Carolina. And so if California wants to have Los Angeles County alone wants to have 2 or 3 million illegals in it, that's their problem. No, it's actually your problem in South Carolina, too. It's a problem for the whole country. It's a problem because of the balance of power that it is affected by with Congress. And it's a problem because the whole point here that the Democrats are pursuing is to make sure that there's a pathway to voting, not just citizenship, voting for all the illegals who have come here, which would make a de facto one-party state. So this is everybody's issue. The days where we would tell ourselves, it's just a blue state, red state thing, I think that has passed. I think everyone understands. Biden let in 10 million plus illegals on purpose. People keep telling me, I don't know. No one knows. No one knows. I mean, the administration doesn't know. This one doesn't know what the full number that came in under Biden is because it was so out of control that it's impossible to tabulate. We just know that it's officially at least 10 million. That's a massive state of illegals that have been added to the U.S. tally.
Totally. I mean, it's more than the people who live in, I think it's all but like 15 states. I mean, the population of the state of Tennessee, where I live, I believe is around 7 million. So more than the state of Tennessee has been let in 4 years just in illegal.
And also keep in mind, there's now some focus on the Reagan amnesty, which I've talked about here on the show back in 1986. What happened? Probably the worst thing that Reagan did as president, unfortunately. Reagan did great things, defeated communism, defeated the Soviet Union, but that was bad. And it was much worse than I think anybody, even Republicans at that time, realized because not only was the amnesty far larger than it was supposed to be. We're signing this law, right? This is back in 1986. I know we're going back now 40 years. We're signing this, and we're going to get border security. And what you got was an amnesty several times larger, millions of people larger than what they thought it would be because of the way the courts went. And, everyone was trying to be covered under that amnesty. They were hearing challenges, I think, into the early 2000s. So think about that. In 1986 amnesty, there are people in like 1999 who were saying, I'm covered under that too. And then it was a massive incentive for more illegal immigration for the years and years to come. Can you think about it this time around? If we just said, you know what, we'll take the 10 million who came in under Biden. Does any serious person believe that there'd be the political will to stop the next 10 million from coming the next time there's a Democrat administration? No, if anything, it would just become a political inevitability. It would be codified that there'd be another 10 million coming, and our immigration laws are just a joke.
Well, that's why whatever Trump does, they have set in place two different diametrically opposed systems. One is if you come, you are allowed in with virtually no court oversight. It's going to take years for your hearings. And in the meantime, you get to live here. And the second part is if you're trying to deport, you have to have massive court hearings, and it's going to take a substantial amount of effort to get that done. So I think they are gaming the system because they're applying two different rules. Let me also mention this, too, as the L.A. riot continues 4 days, and we see the Apple stores getting rioted, and unfortunately I saw a jewelry store owner interviewed, and we'll play some of that for you throughout the course of the program. In fact, at 12:30, so in about 20 minutes from now, we're going to talk with Steve Hilton, who's running for governor. He was out on the streets of Los Angeles last night, what he sees and is experiencing there, what he saw with his own eyes. I think that this is another impact of Elon Musk buying Twitter. Because when Maxine Waters and other Democrats are coming out, I saw another Democrat congresswoman say, well, this is not much different than a sports celebration when a team wins a title. And then you juxtapose those videos side by side. It is we talked about yesterday. I want to get your read on this at some point, but when you've got cops with cars burning and you've got the video of the bricks being thrown at them, it's hard to argue it's a mostly peaceful protest. I think that the fairness of X to allow the full scope of what's truly going on to be seen makes the lies more readily apparent.
Also, the videos and the photos, which I was consuming just as you were all weekend long, and yesterday on the flight up here as I was doing research for today's show, Clay, the notion that you would, as a person who claims to have a right to be in America, you would be standing around burning cars and buildings, holding up the flag of a foreign nation.
Mm-hmm.
That is a person who does not belong here, who does not deserve to be here. And I'm not even getting into the legal status that they may or may not have. But you clearly do not have the kind of love and allegiance for this country and for the rule of law that we want for the American people. It is also shown, and we'll get into this, the data very clearly so far supports what Trump is doing as a matter of public opinion. Let me say, if there was 80-20 against Trump on this, I don't care. This is a rule of law issue, but it's not. In fact, Trump is operating with a majority support of the American people. And the more of this that we see, the burning cars, the rioting, the looting, the madness on the streets, and people waving Mexican flags.
I know.
And saying, I'm so American, I would wave a Mexican flag. Could you imagine? I mean, if I stood in front of a building that was burning in New York City waving an Irish flag, first of all, the Irish people would be like, you haven't been Irish in hundreds of years. And second of all, they'd say, what are you doing? That has nothing to do with us. There's something deeper here, and specifically in Southern California, this is a very precarious issue because you're talking about a group of people who, unlike any other migrant group, really, the only migrant group we have here in large numbers that has come here illegally that can walk back home and sometimes do drive and go back home are people from Mexico. This is not true of people from Europe, from Africa, from anywhere else. And so there's something unique and uniquely destabilizing about individuals who think that they can have it both ways. They can maintain this separate Mexican identity while getting all the benefits of being in America and make demands in this country while actually having citizenship in another country that is right next door. This is something that anybody who's looking at the national security and political implications for this country has to reckon with, that in Southern California, there is and I know that this exists in some other places too, different in Texas because it's a red state, but in Southern California, there is, look, you can see this with people going on CNN saying, well, this was part of Mexico.
I saw that too.
You say, hold on a second, this was part of Mexico. It was part of Mexico for like 15 years or something, and it's been part of America for a couple of hundred. It was a Spanish colony, okay? And the Spaniards aren't dancing around saying, hey, this is actually still ours. So it was Mexican for a short while, and then they lost that territory in a war, which is a thing that happens. That's something that they need to just get used to. So there's a lot going on here that I want to continue to dive into, and Clay, I think this is the most important fight in the country right now, and I think it's more important than concerns about the debt. If we lose on this, we lose on everything else. If we don't have a country with sovereignty and rule of law and immigration, we don't really have a country, and I think that's what people are seeing on the streets of California. 67,000 lives were saved last year by the efforts of the Preborn staff. You know the name Preborn. It's a nonprofit organization that focuses on saving the lives of unborn children. If last year's activities are any indication, and they are, they're doing an incredible job saving lives day in and day out. But they need your help. I know so many of you, you are like me, you are pro-life and you vote pro-life. But do you take action to help those on the front lines? Voting is not enough. There are organizations like Preborn that are saving babies today while we try to change the conscience of some of our fellow Americans on the laws around abortion. And this, my friends, is where Preborn steps in and is doing incredible work right now, saving tiny babies. They do this with a goal, or rather with just $28 of expense per ultrasound, because that ultrasound experience is how, when the mother comes in and she doesn't know what to do, Preborn introduces her to that baby, and this is how lives are saved. And if you have the means, I understand this is a big ask, but a new ultrasound machine for Preborn there are one or two of you right now listening who have been incredibly fortunate and incredibly successful. A new ultrasound machine for preborn would be $15,000. It is entirely tax deductible, and over the life of that machinery, thousands of babies' lives would be saved. Tiny babies in the womb saved. $15,000 would be a new ultrasound machine. For those of you who are listening, you say, you know what, Buck, I can't do that. $28, you are helping, and that is so critical and so important, and they're very thankful for it. To donate securely, dial pound 250, say the keyword baby. That's pound 250, say baby, or visit preborn.com/buck, preborn.com/BUCK, sponsored by Preborn.